All right, today is the start of the annual Mining Indaba in Cape Town. Let us once again cross live to our reporter, Liabo Setho, who is coming live from the annual Mining Indaba, as I said, in Cape Town. And at this Indaba, role players in the mining industry come together to exchange ideas, trends, as well as some information. Liabo, Dumela.
Good morning, Mr. Dumela. Well, while the Mining Indaba officially is expected to be officially opened at around 9 a.m. with the Minister of Minerals and Energy and Resources, it's called these days, Minister Msebenzi, only is expected to get underway at 9 o'clock. There has been some developments before then. The Chamber of Mines has held a press briefing where it has made some remarks regarding the industry itself, saying that having growth in this sector will boost the transformation as well as real growth and transformation, and how those go together for the economy. But it's also mentioned, I must add that it has lost confidence in the Department of Minerals and Energy, and that at the moment they are not engaging with the department but with the ANC itself. Some very disturbing figures about job losses that we've had since 2001, and that those were around 70,000. The last short term from 2006, the end of 2006 to the third term of 2017, only 7,000 jobs have been created in that mining sector. Those are not very good figures. Craig Brewer, he is the co-head of Banking Africa at ABSA, will just give us an insight of what he thinks of what the Chamber of Mines has said about these figures, and also what financiers think, like ABSA. What do they think? What do investors want? What do they want to see in the mining sector? Craig, very good morning to you. What do you think of what the Chamber of Mines has said? You've only created 7,000 jobs in a very high unemployment environment.
Thank you. I think it's not just the jobs, it's the whole element of transformation, making sure that everyone in this country can actually participate in the resource wealth. And that's why I think with the Chamber's positive comments this morning, with Mr. Ramaphosa winning the ANC electoral conference in December, you've seen a sea change in terms of the positive sentiment out there. And I think it's a real win for the mining industry that you'll get someone like Mr. Ramaphosa who will bring business, labour and government to the table. Because in the past 2 years, government and business had been on opposite sides of the table in a complete impasse, particularly over this mining charter. And the mining charter goes to local ownership, it goes to fostering investment inside this country, and with investment you get job creation.
Let's talk about investment and finances and financing. We have a lot of those investors who have touched down, 350 of them actually here. What do you think is going through their minds when they look at the impasse between the industry and the Chamber of Mines?
Investors come here and they're really enthused about Africa and South Africa. But over the past 2 to 3 years, there's been incredible nervousness with the regulatory uncertainty in terms of the DMR and the mining charter, some of the corruption of state-owned enterprises and things like Eskom, the lack of willingness of government to speak to these investors and find out what they want. And I think people are hoping that changes, and you've got an awesome opportunity here in Cape Town to actually put on a good show to offshore investors and our local investors and say, we're open for business, come in, we'll make sure that there's certainty. You've seen the changes in Eskom already, so that'll affect some of the coal producers, and you've already seen people like Anglo American and South 32 be very nervous with regards to Eskom type coal mines and wanting to withdraw. So we can change that if we put a positive message out to the investor community.
One thing I know is that the people sitting at home, they always want to know what the mining communities or the mining communities with which are watching us today, they want to know how is this change going to affect them. One of the bones of contentions with the mining charter was the issue of black ownership. Do you think that we can, the industry and government can at least find a meeting point to just benefit the people living around those areas?
Definitely, you're talking communities and they need to be looked after. And I think in principle, whether it's global investors, local investors, everyone believes in transformation in BEE. It's just a question of certainty, what levels can the industry afford, and then making sure that that ownership is at the right level. You need to build black industrials in this country without doubt, but also you need people, the average person out there needs to experience some kind of value transfer from the resources in this country. Because what's important is once those resources are gone, it's not like agriculture, they don't grow again. So people need to share in the economy from right up front.
Let's talk about the very sharing of the economy and also entrance into the mining market. We don't see a lot of black people entering the mining sector because it's largely being already dominated by virtually white-owned companies. when we move and go into the transformation space, and when you say that the resources will eventually run out, how do we allow new people to come into the system also, while there is still some mineral there, while they can also still make money and do good for their communities as well?
You need to balance a requirement for local ownership and also the returns for investors, because mines are not cheap. It takes a long time to actually do all the feasibility studies, to actually start sinking the shafts before you get to production maybe in 5 years' time, and that's only when the cash flows come. So you need to balance the returns for investors and this local ownership. But what I think is important in terms of the mining industry, it's the indirect employment and benefits. You've got to mind whether it's the services that are provided to mine workers around the community in the actual towns where these mines are. It's that ripple effect that we need in this country.
Let's talk about ethical leadership and good leadership within SOEs and the mining industry itself. How important is this for investors? If someone is sitting, I don't know, somewhere in Europe and say, I want to plant my money in South Africa, how important is good and ethical leadership?
Ethical leadership and good governance is paramount. Remember that South Africa competes for investment dollars everywhere, not just in Africa, but in Latin America, in Australia, in North America. So we need to make sure that we have the best working practices here. And we've just seen in the South African context, we've had a few institutions who've taken some heat in terms of, say, Steinhoff and the governance on that. So people are acutely aware that you need top-level governance. You've seen the changes in Eskom. You'll see the renewed confidence now with bankers being able to lend now back into Eskom.
Craig, thank you very much for making time to speak to us. That's all we have time for. Thank you very much. That was Craig Brewer. He's the co-head of Banking Africa at ABSA, and he tells us that, you know what, if policy certainty is there, regulatory certainty is there, then investors, that's all they need. They want to see the wheels of change moving, and that's all they need for the mining industry to start employing people and to start making a difference in and around their communities. But for now, we move over to sports with Valen.